Well, I appreciate you joining me.
You bet, man. Glad to.
Yeah, cool. So Jess White, right? And there's no IE on that, right? The parents didn't name you Jesse and then you just scrapped it later on in life. Is it it's Jess?
That's right.
Oh, it's on your birth certificate
Just
and everything.
Jess.
Wow. That's awesome.
It is. You got it right there in front of you.
Well, perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. I think I was trying to remember how we originally met. I think it was it was Clubhouse, right? Like we met through Clubhouse. Yeah.
Definitely.
How did you join that group? Because I think you were joined before I did.
Yeah. Maybe like a month or two before you, not very far. Honestly, I just stumbled upon it. No one invited me. I was just cruising Clubhouse, probably like you still do today. I see you on calls all the time.
Oh yeah.
But hopped on and I actually never talked to anyone before. And then Jason called me up and he goes, "Hey Jess, why don't you go and introduce yourself?" I'm like, I'm not ready, but yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But shout out to that Clubhouse group because I've actually already done 2 deals from people in that group. One a sub 2 and another a just regular investment property. So yeah, it works.
Yeah, I tried to get you a sub 2 deal and couldn't quite make it happen, but
I definitely would have bought that one. Yeah, that was perfect.
I know. I was bummed we couldn't get that one, but oh well, it happens sometimes. But so that's funny. I've been on some Clubhouse stages as well, and then you get pulled up and you think you're ready to talk, right? But then you're like, wait, I got to actually talk. And that's exactly how I found that group too, was randomly surfing Clubhouse and stumbled upon it. And I think you might even been there for the first one.
Yeah, I was.
Okay. You remember me coming on. I was like, how long were you there before I jumped in?
That group?
Yeah.
Probably a month, maybe.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So you're at a project right now. So tell me first off, why did you get into real estate? Let's do that. Like what year was it and what made you decide to make that first plunge?
Yeah. So I started in 2014. I started educating myself on it. And then I just kind of I was like, yeah, that sounds impossible. And then I saw some people in my family. It was a cousin of mine. He was just crushing it. And he'd gotten fired from his job. And it was like the best thing that ever happened to him. He started building. And then that's when I realized building houses was possible. So fast forward to 2016, I get flat out fired from my job, not laid off. I was a terrible employee. And I was like, wow, I don't ever want to experience that again. I actually want to, have financial independence and make my own living and not depend on an employer because I was miserable. And so that's what really sped up the process for me because I had that pain point. And that pain point was I don't want to depend on an employer for the rest of my life. And so that's when I got serious about it. Read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Obviously, it's what everyone does. And then about a year later, in 2017, called my dad and I was like, hey, look, he was unemployed. And I said, let's build a house together. He's like, well, I've only built one in my life, but I'm sure we can figure it out. So I paid him 10 grand. We just kind of pieced it together and figured out the process, made it a rental, and it worked out great. And then I built a few more and kept snowballing it up until 4 months ago. I finally left my job. So that would make it 4.5-ish years from the time I started.
Well, hold on a second. There's so much okay, that's a pretty lump sum.
5 minutes, you said, huh?
5 minutes. We got to get there, right? But that's okay. Yeah. I want to break down just a couple of things. First off, I did see in your Instagram where you kind of instantly building, which is a rare way to kind of start off. Mm-hmm. So what made you think you could even possibly do that?
Well, I just called my dad and I saw family members doing it. And
you had people in your life.
It's easy, it's so simple. Plus, kind of. I mean, even if I didn't, you still could have done it because I think anybody can, especially in a landlord-friendly state where the permitting is pretty easy. I'm in East Texas. It's not like California or I don't know, somewhere in the Northeast where there's tons of permitting. You pull one permit and then you get someone at the end to give you your occupancy permit, and that's pretty much it. And then it's just like stacking Legos. If you can do a rehab, you can do a new build. But the only reason I did it is because we had looked at a few existing properties and I'm like, man, I don't want to encounter any maintenance issues because surely something's going to happen in the next few years. And then I thought, why not just build?
Sometimes you got to
Get
be
those low
almost
capital
like,
expenses for
right. Sometimes you got to almost be too inexperienced to even think you can't. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And that was me. And that still is me to this day. I don't consider myself super smart by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm crazy enough to jump in there and take action.
No, I love that. I mean, that's how I feel too. I mean, sometimes you just got to jump in and do it and see what happens. So for sure, I think that's awesome.
You do.
Well, I mean, it's super quick, right? But a couple of other things, I guess we'll get into it. What's something I thought about the other day, and I thought, he's a good guy to ask. What is better, cash or credit? What's better to have on hand? A good amount of credit,
credit
to attack, or cash?
Well, oh gosh,
right?
Credit
right?
is essentially infinite. That's the cool part.
Right.
One of the, on the note of credit, really quick, I'll chase a little bit of a rabbit, but I always tell people open up as many personal lines of credits as you can from local banks. And even if they only give you 5 or 10 grand, and just slowly start using that every year, even if you have zero experience in real estate. If you can get 5 lines of credit for 5 to 10 grand, that's 30 to 50 grand. And every 6 months or a year, ask that bank as you develop that relationship, hey, do you mind bumping it up, $3,000 or $4,000? And typically, if you make good payments, boom, they don't mind doing that. And over time, you can really develop a ton of credit that's usable like cash, and lines of credit are awesome. So I'm going to go with credit. I think everyone else is going to go with cash, but that's going to be me.
Well, what do you do with your excess cash then, right? So as you create cash flow and income, are we just getting to a point that you spend it all, or what are you doing with your cash?
So I'm finally in that kind of surplus cash stage. I closed 2 deals in the past 30 days. The first one, I got $100,000 check for my build, and then I just closed on one last week, $68,000. So I'm sitting on, for me, that's a lot of money. And so I'm in that little predicament of like, okay, what do I do? And I still use credit, even though I have money in the bank, because I love cash. I know how important it is. It's the lifeblood of my business. But I go back and forth between cash and credit.
Yeah. Well, the reason why part of that is I put on
but
something.
I have been very cash poor in the past. Sorry, there's a lag. I'll go ahead and start.
Go ahead.
Just in the past, I have been very cash poor. It's like every deal I do, it's like, oh crap, there's 2 or 3 grand in the business account. And it's like, gosh, I keep draining it, and I constantly feel broke. And I don't want to feel like that anymore. I want to have tons and tons of cushion. So.
Got it. All right. Last question. Where can people reach out to you if they want to touch base and find out what you're doing?
Instagram, Investor Jess. That is the number one place. Send me a direct message, and also follow Mr. Michael Thompson, man. He's a subject to king.
Yeah, man. I love the creative. Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
So what do you got going on right now? So, okay. Are you living in this while you flip it?
No,
while you work on it?
We've been living nomadically for the past 4 months. This is our primary. And
I think I saw you at an Airbnb, weren't you? At one of your Airbnbs?
Yes. So today is moving day, and that was the movers. And I had to run. I drove my bike to the gas station to give them a tip because they couldn't take cards. So, but yeah, finally all wrapped up with it.
That's that cash we keep talking about. You got to have that cash on hand, physically on hand.
In my pocket.
Yeah. And then you can actually pay those guys. That's hilarious.
Exactly. Yeah, man, let's keep rolling.
Well, how many Airbnbs are you up to now?
I only have 2. But those are worth about $1 million total. So
what's better, Airbnb or traditional rental?
Gosh, man, I like both of them. I can't be partial because someone asked me the other day, like, what's your criteria if you want to do, like, when you want to do an Airbnb versus a long term. And for me, it's got to be at least 2x the monthly rent. That's the minimum. Like if rent's 2,000, I need at least $4,000 to make worth my time. And that's if I'm going to self-manage. If I'm going to hire someone, probably 3 times.
Yeah. I mean, well, and that's just for your time, because it is more time consuming. I mean, I'm sure you're doing some
Yeah,
kind of processes, but even then it can be time consuming. I mean,
absolutely.
are you self-managing currently?
My wife does. So she came from the full-time property management world. We moved from
Oh,
California
look at
last
that.
year. I'm a native Texan, so I'll say that I'm not not a born and raised Californian. But yeah, she managed 1,000 units in Silicon Valley, and so she brings that experience, and she can kind of streamline things and make it easier. And she's definitely the jam to my jelly. She's super awesome. Helps out a lot.
That's awesome. I mean, I guess I didn't realize that she had already had property management experience. So she's answering
Yeah,
all the messages through Airbnb, and then you're over
yeah.
there just making it happen.
That's the goal. Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you end
I
up
I've
getting,
passed
go
off
ahead.
I've passed off some of my properties on my partnership to a property manager recently, just because we were having a lot of issues. But she still manages our new construction and our Airbnbs. Um, but she likes it, and it doesn't take a lot of her time. But whenever she's ready to not do that anymore, I told her just to let me know.
Is she managing the rehabs as well?
She does a good bit of that too. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. We're
That's
now an
amazing.
official team.
That's awesome. Did you
Yeah,
end up getting your license in Texas?
I
Real estate
I
license?
did. Yeah,
Okay. And are you using that at all?
not really. I've submitted I think 2 offers for a potential partnership, and I still use agents. And people ask me all the time, "Why do you use agents?" To me, it's just easy. It's easy to use an agent, and a good agent that's on your team can do a lot of the legwork for you. Um, and especially if they're finding me deals, like I'll use them all day long. I don't need to, pinch pennies. If you're bringing me a deal, I'm glad to give you the commission on it.
Right, for
So
sure. One of the things that I like about my license is that, so I like it for creative offers, because you
yes,
just can't get uh, an agent to give a creative offer, right? So I like to put
hmm
pressure on them. I'll send out mass amounts of creative offers. I'll just analyze them from my desk, write them up, and send them out, and just put pressure on them
yeah,
to decline them. Basically, like I want them to send me back that the seller declines the offer, but occasionally get somebody, well, tell me more, right? And like that's all I need is just find
start a
the
conversation.
more, right? So that could be an
Yes.
idea for you. Just finding. I ended up, because the market was so hot, right, and kind of continues to be. Is it still hot there as well?
Oh, absolutely.
So one of the things that I've done then is anything over the market 30. It's been on the market for over 30 days without an offer. I'm just sending them creative deal offers.
Dude, that's so smart. Is that working for you?
No, not at all. But I think it's worth it.
Yes.
I think it's going to take like probably 500 or so before I get there, right? And my
Yeah, I
process is
love that whole lead lag measure versus like how many deals you close on. How many offers are you putting out there? Because that's really all that matters. Because eventually something's going to stick.
right.
Oftentimes we focus on those wrong metrics.
Yeah, I think this is going to take a whole lot of offers to get there, because we're we just can't educate every single realtor that we walk across, right? They're just not
Yeah.
always going to get it. Some do, and some have done it before, but it's far and few between.
Well, even investors, if you explain to them the subject to process, it's like explaining what an NFT or the
Well,
cryptocurrency, what the latest crypto is. Like
it's like
people are like, oh
understanding
yeah,
crypto.
wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like understanding crypto and then trying to teach them NFTs. It's like, wait, I just learned crypto. Like, why are you making me learn
Exactly.
NFTs? Although they're related, right?
Yes.
Like they're in the same ballpark.
Yes.
Um, okay. So I looked a lot on your social. Like, so TikTok is huge for you right now, right?
Kind of. I've slowed down a lot on it. It's a lot of
Why?
effort.
Is it a lot of
Because
editing?
I'm not putting in the consistent work. I'm not going to say the algorithm screwed me. Um, I'm
And you're
now.
busy too.
I was
You're
traveling
actually busy.
full time, so when I was in California, my family was here in Texas. I was there for
Right.
4 days a week by myself, and so when I got off work at 3 o'clock,
Oh,
I
that's right.
had hours to just like grind it out and make up 3 or 4 pieces of content. It was easy. I'm not saying I can't do it, but it's laziness on my part now. But I want to step it up.
I mean, maybe. But what what is it about TikTok that drove you over there? Because I'm resisting, not because of any reason. It's just another platform, and I'm trying to not go to multiple platforms. Why are you? What drove you to TikTok?
Because one viral TikTok can change your entire life. The same does not go for Instagram. If you have 20 followers and for some reason Michael Thompson's video on subject to, maybe you're making a fake conversation with, Michael A and Michael B, and you're just like going back and forth, and somehow it takes off, gets 2 million views, and in your TikTok you've got a link to your Instagram, and then overnight you wake up and you've got an additional 30,000 followers on Instagram. TikTok followers, relatively worthless. Like it's really hard to monetize them, specifically because they're a lot younger demographic. But who's to say that won't turn into something in the future? But you can transfer those followers to a more prominent and dominant platform like Instagram. People on Instagram, it's a whole different game. The followers develop a relationship with you over time, and TikTok's a really easy way to kind of, I don't know, gamble at the craps table and hope for the best. And I've had a few videos. I've had, I think, 4 or 5 get almost 1 million views.
That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, Instagram feels more permanent, where TikTok feels transient, like a little bit, right?
It is.
But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Obviously, there's a lot of people on TikTok. I mean, there's a lot of people on TikTok. So how are you managing, I guess what's the best way to manage out-of-state investing when you were out-of-state investing? Mm-hmm. Versus I could in-state kind of, you're there, boots on the ground now, but before that you were not. So
yeah,
how are you managing that?
I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah,
I think the best way to manage it is to have some kind of boots on the ground, and honestly, that can be a real estate agent and a handyman. Ideally, I wasn't doing property management, and that got pretty tough when you don't have someone there, because then you got to call somebody. It's like, hey, can I pay you $50 to go run by this unit and check this out? And that gets kind of frustrating. You got to depend on people. But going forward, I think if someone's looking to get into out-of-state investing, I definitely recommend property managers. Pay the whatever 10%. It's worth it. I think it's good initially, maybe to manage your own, because you're going to learn a lot, and you might even get a bad taste in your mouth for real estate, just because you experience a lot of challenging things. For me, I wanted to be really nice to people. When someone called, they're like, hey, my child's in the hospital and I need a few more days for rent. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's no problem.
Yeah,
but
right.
Then the pattern starts. As soon as one thing slides, everything goes downhill. And if someone gets a month behind, it's over. They're never catching up.
It does start kind of early, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. But yeah, overall, I would say hire a property manager, have some kind of boots on the ground. And all I had was boots on the ground initially. That's my advice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. That's super important. I mean, that feels just like my life too, a little bit, going from, because I started out in property management. That's what I did. As soon as I got my license, my brokerage, they let me start out managing right away. So I did. Wow. I managed for mom and pops, and got to 20 units pretty quick under management.
How was that?
Oh, it was great. Actually, it was great at first. I was able to find like I was local, like I was just doing my local people. And then as that started to grow and you start to really need larger maintenance items, it became pretty, it turned into a full on business. So I ended up partnering with somebody, and we grew that property management company about 150 units under management. Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's small potatoes kind of for a lot of people, but it was good. We ended up dissolving that and moving on.
I remember you telling us about that.
Yeah, that's the part that got me, right. Like,
but I'm sure you learned a lot from that too, going forward.
And I could probably open up a property management company tomorrow and do pretty well. Because of the lessons I've learned. I would have done it much, much differently. But I've moved on and said, okay, I'm going to let other people manage my properties for me. Just like
Can I ask you a question about partnerships really quick?
Sure.
I know this is a Jess interview, but
Yeah. No,
And by the
I
way,
love it
I
because I had
started
partner
my own
questions.
podcast, and I'd love for you to come on sometime.
Cool. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
I'll direct message you sometime, either today or tomorrow.
Okay.
But so you've experienced a dissolved partnership. I've experienced a couple of partnerships, and there's definitely been some friction there before. What did you learn from one that completely dissolved, and what would you do differently today? Going in, let's say you're going in a partnership with me or whoever. Let's use a neutral person. What red flags are you looking for, and what are you going to do differently?
Yeah. I mean, I've been really slow to partner up again. I recently have, but we're taking it very, very slow. First off, we're keeping everything separate. It's on the wholesale side. So I'll tell you what went wrong in the other ones. We jumped in without having a clear definition of who roles are whose. Okay.
Yep.
And we didn't address, and this is where I find Dave Ramsey's answers pretty interesting, is the D's, right? What happens if you get divorced? What happens if someone gets addicted to drugs? What if somebody has disinterest in being in the partnership anymore? All the problems that could potentially happen in a partnership have to be addressed before you go into the proper partnership, right? And we didn't address any of them. And I tried to in the second one, but he was like, "Yeah, we'll get to it," and I just let him roll me because I'm like you, I'm like more of the nice guy. So putting my foot down early and saying, no, this and having values that are aligned weren't exactly the first one, I think was, and that person became disinterested, right? Part of the D's. They wanted to move on and do something different. And the second one, I became more disinterested and we didn't have exact values aligned. So that was my fault. Both of them were my fault. I just didn't vet them. So this last one that I'm getting, I waited almost 2 years before the second one or before my most recent one. And I'll partner on deals. I mean, that's a little different, right? Just like the deal here.
JV.
There. Yeah, I've done some JVs. That's fine. But a true partnership, we're slow going it. We're keeping everything kind of separate, giving each other a test ride. We could both end it tomorrow and it's perfectly fine. Nothing's the matter, right? And then getting in writing, unfortunately. Yeah, I think that's important. So before we make that next step, we'll have it in writing. So we're taking it slow. It's like dating.
I love that. Yes, it is. And I love that you mentioned the D's, Dave Ramsey stuff, because I think the next partnership I do, I am going to sit down with an attorney, just pay them $400 or $500 for 45 minutes or whatever. Just be like, hey, let's set up a call. He asks a bunch of questions. What if this? What if that? And then obviously writing down expectations and roles and responsibilities. Yeah.
And there may be some overlap. There may be overlap, and that's okay. It's not going to be perfect. I think, you got to adjust as you go, but it can also, if you don't have some kind of delineation of roles, either nothing gets done or too much stepping on each other's toes. But to talk about Dave Ramsey again, he also says that he has no interest in partnerships, right? He adamantly against partnerships. And I think
really, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. He says the only ship that doesn't sail is a partnership. Right. So that's his thing. But I the one thing that I found interesting was the D's. I'm like, okay, so if we address all of the D's of the issues that we might have, then I think we can be okay. As what happens in all these situations, and what I tried to do that, like I said, with the second one, but I just didn't push hard enough and it's my fault. So, our values weren't aligned and I got disinterested in not having similar values basically. And we're all friends. I'm friendly with everybody. So nothing ended in a way that I'm arguing with anybody.
That's good, man. Wow. But you learned so much. That's the good part.
I did. And you've had some partnerships too. I mean, is it like, have you ended partnerships then as well?
So I'm only in one active partnership right now that I can think of, but I've done like little joint ventures here and there, some with family. I don't know what else going in this.
That makes me laugh. That makes me laugh already. Yeah, no, we don't have to go into it too personal, but partnerships are tough.
The struggle.
Yeah,
sure. They are. But there's been a lot of good from it. Like I've learned a lot And then the ability to find a lot more deals and do a lot more volume, like the whole, I think Brandon Turner talks about it. Like, even if you're splitting something 33, 33, 33, but you're doing 10 times the volume you would on your own, you still have more than you would by yourself. And sometimes there's kind of, being an entrepreneur is kind of lonely, like when you have a victory, right? When you go to a closing and you make 50 grand doing something, like you can't go tell your guy from high school. I mean, I guess you can. It's great. Right. We have communities like Instagram where you can, it's not just bragging. It's like, hey guys, like let's celebrate this together. And people genuinely want to celebrate it. And so that's the nice part about partnerships. However, I highly recommend not getting in a partnership just because you're lonely. It's like getting in a relationship just because you're lonely.
Right.
The same thing.
Well, yeah, exactly. And, I think that's why I really like Clubhouse too. It's more,
yes.
It's nice to hear people that are doing what you're doing and having that conversation and bouncing ideas off of and any problems you might be having. So that's what I definitely like Clubhouse for that. I mean, Instagram's good too, but I think Clubhouse is great. I love the audio version of talking to people and seeing what they're doing. Yeah. And having good relationships, like actual relationships with people.
Yeah.
Well, fun things then. I want to go into a couple of fun things. Like a lot of your stuff too is about flying and meat. You got a lot of meat on your Instagram. It makes me laugh so much. I'm like, man, that does really look good. Like he's getting some serious brisket, some like serious like meat going on here. I like it a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll talk about that initially. My first thought was like, oh man, I can't post like barbecue stuff or cooking because people are here for real estate and financial independence. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Screw that. Like I'm building my personal brand. And if someone doesn't like what I love, like this is what I'm all about. I love barbecue. I love real fire cooking. I love flying airplanes and being adventurous and traveling and my kids and my wife, man. And so I want that to all be intertwined into my business, into who you see on Instagram. That's me. And I want that to be real. I don't want it to just be real estate. This is the Jess White that you'll meet in person as well. And so that's why I post a lot of that. But yeah, I absolutely love cooking barbecue. I got real into it a couple of years ago. I grew up in it and it's a ton of fun. I love hosting people, and maybe one day we can do a Clubhouse, kind of cook off kind of thing, invite everybody out.
Yeah. I'll get my wife to help me with that one for sure. Like she's got chicken noodles down to a science now. It's pretty awesome.
That is cool.
Yeah. What about, so my brother-in-law is a pilot and he nice. Flies. He flies. We call him semi-retired because he works for actually a real estate mogul out of Indianapolis. She owns a lot of multifamily and a lot of college town multifamily, but he flies for her in exclusively. So how does one, my question is, how does one find a plane to buy? And what do you go for a test ride and say, yeah, this is the plane that I'm going to get?
Yeah, actually I didn't. I knew my price range. So initially I got my license over a couple of years and I was renting. So renting's like $140 an hour pretty much for what I was flying. And that kind of starts to add up. If I want to go like fly to Houston, my mother-in-law's down there and we're down there a lot. And my hometown is about 4 hours north. If I fly there, it's about an hour and a half and I burn maybe 10 gallons, which cost me $50, at most. And I always wanted to own a plane. And so I've got a few friends that are pilots and started talking to them and I wanted something affordable. And so I found something that works just to build time. Like my plane's nothing fancy. People think when they hear I have a plane, they're like, oh, you're rich. I'm like, no, like it's a Honda Civic.
Exactly.
25 or 27 grand is what I paid for it. And these things appreciate in value. So found it online, a guy in North Carolina, and no, I didn't test drive it at all. Airplanes are typically pretty airworthy. There's a lot of inspections that go every year and they go under a lot of scrutiny. And so I knew what I wanted. I'd flown that kind of plane before and then flew out there, took it for a lap around the field and said, cool, let's do it. And then flew it home to Texas.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, but definitely real estate has helped afford that.
100%.
Yeah.
And interesting enough, a quick little side story. I haven't told anybody about this. The guy I bought the plane from, what interested me the most about it is that he said he would seller finance the plane. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. That sounds amazing. Like $400 a month for like 6 years or 5 years, something like that. Like, that's amazing. That's something that I will appreciate. And so he called me a few days later. The initial price was 30 grand. He's like, hey man, it's actually kind of difficult to do this. He goes, do you mind if I like drop the price a few grand? Like, can you just pay cash? So, yeah, sure. So I paid him 27 grand. And as I meet the guy, I noticed he picks me up at the hotel in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was listening to Bigger Pockets.
No kidding.
And he's an active real estate investor. He had a 50 plus unit storage facility under contract, $1 million. And the guy just crushing it. Well, he was upgrading a significant plane. But yeah, it's just super cool. And then like we hit it off, and like my wire for the plane didn't even go through, but he just like, we had so much in common through Bigger Pockets. He's like, oh dude, just take the plane, go. I don't care. He's like, I'm sure it'll come through. It's fine.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we talked all about BP and all that stuff. So
very cool, man. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you giving me time. It's fun talking to you.
No problem, dude.
I like to hear the personal and the real estate. I mean, we could go in real estate for hours, and I got more questions, but I actually got to get to it too. So I got some people. Got my texting lady is going to be here soon. So my virtual assistant, man. Got to get with her.
Well, it's my pleasure being on here today, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Man, I appreciate it. All right, Jess, we'll see you in Clubhouse.
Sounds good, man. We'll see you soon, Michael.
Take care.
Later.